liberated woman. Vidya, a single mother and daughter in Balaki's spa, takes care of a son affected by a rare genetic disorder. People in Shuji's hospital is a working girl who has to look after his and hypochondriac father. Even as Shivan Roy Madani, this woman is helping to stop trafficking, Neela, brave hair, which is the life, the film displays awe-inspiring courage on a flight that has been hijacked by terrorists. Mary Kom, the boxer and the heroine of the London Olympic Games, whose life imprisoned and inspired the film, is today a sports icon. Like fictitious all-women's hockey team in Chakti, another film which starred Shah Rukh Khan. And I have to add here that very recently we had the Indian women's team winning the Asian Championship. I want to truly say, Shah Rukh, that this is an inspired conversion in many ways from film to reality. Even the role of mothers have changed, ladies and gentlemen. From selfless homemaker who could tell her son once he returned home at the end of the day, "Tu haath muh dho kar aa, main tere liye khana lagati." Every mother says that. We now have brave vice-mate in Chinika, the working mommy who likes an evening drink in Vicky Yoga, and the more complex Ghazala Mir of Hyder, whose son displays dark undertones of the Oedipus complex. These changing images have not been sudden. They emerged slowly and steadily over the decades. Today, women are on the threshold of a huge transition, encompassing several structural role reversals within families, marriages, and the workplace. Women's largely subservient station is breaking up, and new roles based on achievement, independence, equality are gradually seeing the light of day. In the matter of relationships, women in ancient India enjoyed equal status rights with men in all spheres of life. They were educated, as can be referenced from grammarians such as Patanjali and Katyayana, and they had the liberty to select their husbands through the system of Swayamvar. Once foreign invaders began marauding our cities, their condition unfortunately deteriorated from the medieval period. Thus entered regressive practices like child marriage, sati, female infanticide, along with parda and the dreaded practice of jawhar by women in Rajasthan who were trying to save their honor in the aftermath of war. Yet, when we look back at past events, we realize that women were also at the helm of kingdoms. Our historical films based on the lives of Razia Sultan, Mirabai, Noor Jahan, Jahanara, Rani of Jhansi, to name a few, upheld the spirit of valor and independence in a society that was riddled with patriarchal proclivities. Khoob ladi mardani, wo to Jhansi wali Rani thi, is a well-loved refrain from a famous Hindi poem by Subhadra Kumari Chauhan. And here, ladies and gentlemen, even the word mardani is derived from the word mard. Mard, the word which is a description of male valor and strength. And why is there not an independent word for female valor? This is something I feel needs debate and consideration. Within domestic confines, women were earlier on largely seen as possessions or conquests of men. Yet, Choti Bahu of Sahib Bibi or Ghulam, Sahib Jan of Pakiza, Umrao Jan, Amrapali, Mastani of Bajirao Mastani, and several others showed their true spark in defying social taboos, often succumbing to death or loneliness because of their rebellious spirit. However, it was Rosie in the film Guide who became a watershed in the destiny of women in Indian cinema. When she left her philandering husband to choose a passion for dancing, she did not walk her path alone. Her falling in love with someone who valued her as a person even when she was already married, was frowned upon by many conservatives. Later, Rosie again pursued her heart and drifted apart from her lover when he did not turn out to be what she had expected. Certainly, Rosie was one of the rare characters in Hindi cinema that stood for what she believed in and made her own choices in relationships, going against all norms of what was expected of Indian women at that time. Another significant film is Raj Kapoor's Prem Road, focused on the plight of Manorama after she lost her husband. Devdar, a childhood friend, not only offered her solace but also marriage and respect. At the time when widows were boycotted in conservative homes, this sensitive topic of widow remarriage and her right to seek a new life came as a breath of fresh air. Rituparna's Ghosh Chokirbani also showcased the plight of a young widow, Vinodini, and her manipulative relationships with men. And it may be relevant here, ladies and gentlemen, to refer to the film Sholay, where Radha, the character that was played by Jaya, is denied and is shattered of her dreams of perhaps a widow remarriage by witnessing the death of Jay in the film. Paroma, the upper middle class wife in a Aparna Sen's eponymous film, was not only found an inner awakening in a relationship with a much younger lover, but also discovered a dogged determination to walk out of her marriage and earn her own living. Pooja in Maheshwar's Arth exemplified a woman blossoming and forging fresh bonds when she found her husband two-timing her. Kia Bansal in Balki's Key and Ka was most delightfully accepted as a complete reversal of roles when she married a man who was willing to take care of the home while she went out to work. And then, very recently, there was a very liberated and divorced poetess, Sabha, in Karan Johar's Ae Dil Hai Mushkil, who turned the tables irrevocably on men when she told her lover, "Main kisi ki zarurat nahi, khwahish banna chahti." How is that for a metaphorical slap on misogynistic cheeks? Talking of women in education, the government of West Bengal, I'm happy to note, has started the Kanya Shri Prakalp. This is to incentivize and educate the girl children and helping families from poor economic backgrounds to allow their daughters to continue with their studies. The Government of India's Beti Bachao Beti Padhao Yojana also aims at generating awareness and improving the welfare and education services meant for girls. Our cinema has also reflected on education of females through the past decades. Little Ratan in Postmaster, the first story in Ray's Teen Kanya, is a simple village lass who's keen to learn. She works as a domestic help for the village postmaster by day, and he in turn teaches her to read and write in the evenings. In Ashish Sen's Mamta, Suparna is educated with the help of a long-time admirer of the family. She goes to England, becomes a lawyer, and then, trapped in the twists and turns of Kismet, finally defends a courtesan who turns out to be her mother. Michelle McNally, the deaf-blind protagonist in Sanjay Leela Bhansali's Black, from a rebellious child, finally goes to college and graduates, aided by her aging teacher Devraj, whom she later helps to rediscover life. Michelle's relationship with her mentor remains an inspiration for those who have a limited view of people with disabilities. From selling laddus, an ironical metaphor, Shashi Godbole in Gauri Shinde's English, a diffident housewife, finally learns to speak English when she goes to visit her sister in New York. Fed up of being mocked by her family, she secretly enrolls in a conversational English class that offers to teach the language within 4 weeks. With the ability to express herself in a new tongue, Shashi not only learns to display her resourcefulness at navigating an unfamiliar city alone, but also makes new friends and finds fresh respect at home. Geeta from Ashutosh Gowarkar Swadesh, another film that Shahrukh worked, is an empowered woman who makes her own decisions. This highly educated girl gives up lucrative offers in the city and chooses to stay back and teach children in her village so that they can have a better future. Chanda Sahai in Nilbati Sannata, directed by Ashwini Iyer Tiwari, is a high school dropout, slogging away as a housemaid. She is also single mother of a sullen daughter called Apeksha, who, ladies and gentlemen, refuses to be serious about her studies. So, what does Chanda do? She enrolls herself in Apeksha's class, and together, through moments of animosity and resentment, the two of them complete. Apeksha, after graduation, attends the Union Public Service Commission, and in the interview when she is asked what inspired her to apply for the IAS, she answers that her inspiration is her mother, who now tutors struggling math students free of charge. Through Apeksha's success, we appreciate how everyone has a right to dream and change their lives, irrespective of social status. In politics, women have contributed shoulder to shoulder with men not only during the independence movement, but also held a position of the highest authority after freedom. In governance, as the Prime Minister, Chief Ministers of several states, top positions in the judiciary, corporate echelons, and the bureaucracy. And need I say that our host tonight and the Honorable Chief Minister of West Bengal is the first woman to be the Chief Minister of the state of Bengal. Three outstanding films that reflect on politics vis-a-vis women are worthy of mention tonight. Shyam Benegal's Ankur is a case in point. On the surface, the plot seems to be another landlord-mistress story. However, the underbelly becomes an indictment of the male-dominated social, economic and political order fighting class against class. Lakshmi, a lowly village woman, is seduced by the landlord Surya. Once her speech-impaired husband disappears, without resorting to polemics, Benegal talks of social inequities in a world where the village chieftain, with nothing more than a high school certificate, is the money god. Yet in such a class-ridden atmosphere, the seedling or ankur for change is planted. When Lakshmi becomes pregnant and is strongly advised by Surya to abort his child to avoid infamy, she asks, "Must I alone feel the blame? Must I alone feel the blame?" Here for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps the winds of political transformation were blowing in a quiet village. Gulzar's Auntie is a full-fledged political drama. The story is based on a chance meeting of an estranged couple after several years when Aarti Devi, now a leading politician, happens to stay in a hotel run by her husband during an election campaign. Aarti Devi's intense struggle to stay politically afloat, a lonely life and a need to be understood and loved, despite uncertainties of her future, are exquisitely delineated. Here is a woman in a man's world fighting the good fight. Prakash Jha in Rajniti, the film Rajniti, uses the structure of the Mahabharata loosely to spin a story of high political intrigue. Virendra Pratap Singh and Prithvi Pratap Singh are heirs to a powerful political party. When Prithvi gets to take the lead, Virendra teams up with a backward class leader to plot against his cousin. Then Prithvi suddenly dies in a bomb blast. This is the fateful juncture when Virendra Pratap has to contend with Prithvi's widow, Indu, who is sucked into the nexus to save her family. Indu gets unwillingly trapped in a deadly family feud, but she refuses to cower down once she decides to face her political rivals on their own turf. Women and sexual harassment is an extremely sensitive topic, much debated in the media. Ladies and gentlemen, it took an unfortunate incident like Nirbhaya to take place for laws to change in this country, which came into force on the 3rd of April 2013. Sexual harassment, sexual violence, acid attacks, voyeurism, trafficking of persons, and other similar crimes if proved are now severely punishable. Women in India have started to recognize their true potential. Today, they are questioning the rules laid down by a male-dominated society. From being objectified, they now wish to be recognized as individuals with equal legal and constitutional rights. All along, in a conservative middle-class India, there has been an oft-heard phrase, "Achhe ghar ki ladkiyan." This phrase has policed women's behavior and has spelled out attributes that qualify them as good and virtuous. Consequently, in the 60s and the 70s, when Mona Darling displayed her long legs, her ridiculous blonde wig and lit a villain's cigar, the audience celebrated the arrival of a decorated vamp. But Mona's badness took place in a scenario that was often larger than life and unreal. The situation, ladies and gentlemen, thankfully has changed today. Though Radha in Mehboob Khan's Mother India was perhaps one of the few women in the 1950s who took a stand against assault when her son Birju, a dreaded dacoit, abducted a woman from the village. She did not hesitate to shoot him down while he was trying to escape, exemplifying an act of unity with the whole of womankind. And we know, ladies and gentlemen, who we're talking of. We're talking of iconic Nargis ji and Sunil ji, parents of Sanjay Dutt, who is present with us today. Sanjay Dutt wasn't even dreamed of when this film was being made. Satyajit Ray's Abhijan, Tapan Sinha's Adalat Ekti Mein, Rituparna Ghosh's Doham, and several other films in Bengali have also echoed the plight of women as rape and assault victims and their struggle in seeking freedom and justice. Sonbai in Ketan Mehta's Mirch Masala debunked the myth of the patriarchal protector when the village men tried to trade her to a powerful subedar for the sake of the village's safety. Matrubhumi, a nation without women, based on the topic of female feticide, mirrored the plight of Kalki's sexual abuse and gang rape, showcasing the dismal future of the country if we kept killing the girl child. Damani in the film of similar name portrayed a strong woman who fought against her own family for molesting the housemaid. The fire of revenge often lit in the screen when scorned women took center stage to punish murder or rape or social injustice. Aarti Verma, also known as Jyoti in Khoonbari Maan, Durga in Sherni, Kiran Dutt in Zakhmi Aurad are some examples from our films from the 90s and the 90s and the 80s. Years later, Vidya Bagchi in Kahani, film Kahani, also avenged her husband's murder, keeping stereotypes at bay. In Imtiaz Ali's Highway, released in the year 2014, Veera, gruesomely kidnapped by a group of men on a late evening ride with her fiancé, exacerbated her plight when the gang's leader finally allowed her to escape, but she refused to go. That is when she revealed to her captor the sexual abuse she had faced since childhood, setting up a meaningful contrast between the open landscapes and psychological freedom she experienced on the journey against the forbidding domain of urban, domestic patriarchy. In Abhishek Chaudhary's Urta Punjab, released this year, a nameless Bihari immigrant trapped by drug traffickers is repeatedly raped by her captors, sadly exemplifying the reality of the invisible lower caste women in India that exists even today. Leena Yadav's Parched, another film recently released, also deals with the subject of sexual violence experienced by 3 uneducated rural women in the hinterlands of Rajasthan. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, Pink, on the other hand, pushes the envelope with its female protagonists in an urban situation. Meenal Arora, Falak Ali, Andrea Daryan are educated, English-speaking, have good jobs, and are respectable, tax-paying members of society. They are, to all intents and purposes, emancipated women, and all the liberties afforded by their financial independence. Yet, Pink raises unsettling queries largely ignored by our film industry and brings the issue of sexual violence and sexual consent into urban middle-class homes. It forces the audience to ask themselves tough questions about whether education has really changed the way women are treated in urban India. Though the Age of Consent Act was legalized, ladies and gentlemen, 125 years ago in the year 1891, how many times, ladies and gentlemen, has the value of consent been taken for granted in our society? How many times has our culture considered consent, and specifically sexual consent, important enough to be acknowledged and discussed? How many times, ladies and gentlemen, has no meant no? Let me repeat to every woman in India, young and old, what Deepak Sehgal, the lawyer who fights the case in Pink for his clients Meenal Falak and Andrea, had to say in the poem that came in the film. तो खुद की खोज से निकल, तो किस लिए हताश है, तो चलते वजूद की समय की तलाश है। जो तुझसे लिपटी बेड़ियां समझना इनको वस्त्र तू, ये बेड़ियां पिघाल कर बना दे इनको शस्त्र तू, तो खुद की खोज में निकल, तो किस लिए हताश है, तो चलते वजूद की समय की तलाश है। चरित्र जब पवित्र है तो क्यों है ये दशा तेरी? चरित्र जब पवित्र है तो क्यों है ये दशा तेरी? ये पापियों को हक नहीं गिले परीक्षा तेरी, तो खुद की जला के भस्म कर उसे जो क्रूरता का राज है, जला के भस्म कर उसे जो क्रूरता का जाल है। ये आरती की लौ नहीं, ये क्रोध की मशाल है। समय की तलाश है। और अंतिम बात है, चुनर उड़ा के ध्वज बना, गगन भी कब तपाएगा। चुनर उड़ा के ध्वज बना, गगन भी कब तपाएगा। अगर तेरी चुनर गिरी तो एक भूकंप आएगा, एक भूकंप आएगा। खुद की खोज में निकल, तो किसलिए हताश है, तो चल वजूद की समय को भी तलाश है, समय को भी तलाश है, समय को भी तलाश है। धन्यवाद।